You moved to Rotterdam for your work at the Biports. Where were you before Rotterdam?
Yeah, so I only moved 5 months ago to Rotterdam.
Hmm.
I was living in Madrid back in the day in my home country. And yeah, it was an exciting move actually. I'm enjoying the city a lot.
I'm glad. What advice would you offer to young professionals who've had to move out of their country for work? They're starting off a new job, they're around a whole new group of people, and to top it all off, they're in a completely new environment, a new city. What did you do to cope? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it may be challenging at first because you have to be focused on work, and then it's easy to not focus too much in building connections, like personal connections, and you're very focused on professional connections. So I would say the best thing is to try to get out of your comfort zone, do things that you would not do in if you were home. And also talking about G Connection, I know there's this part of the app where you can connect with all the professionals or all the recent graduates that are in the same situation as you, and that's very nice because it enables you to meet people in the same
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
situation.
It just helps make it all easier when you have people who are going through the same thing around you.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people would be out there wanting to apply to jobs in logistics, wanting to go to the Biport, for example.
Mhm.
What advice would you offer? What's one thing that all of them that you feel like a lot of them do wrong, and one thing that they can just avoid while they're looking for jobs? Perhaps not even in logistics, just looking for corporate jobs.
Yeah, I think in general people are afraid to make decisions. I think it's very important to take risks,
Yeah.
to go for it, even if you don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, usually people who are looking for their first job are young, have all their life to do things to change. So I think it's very important to take the risk. And sometimes people want to, some people want a clear pathway. And sometimes the only way to have a clear pathway is trying and applying, going for it.
So I spoke to a gentleman, Sam, yesterday
Mhm.
who works at Google Dublin, and I talked to him about how he used things like LinkedIn or just personal branding to to get him his work, And he said that he didn't use LinkedIn at all. All he did was he worked on his CV a lot. He tried building strong networks. He tried talking to a lot of people. Constantly just hard work on your CV, work on your CV, apply to one job a day, keep doing this. How did you do? What was your process?
Well, I worked on my CV as well. Of course, it's very important having
Yeah.
a nice CV attracts the HR, and it's easier to get a nice job if you have a nice CV. But definitely, the personal brand is important. I think nowadays everybody uses LinkedIn. Recruiters are in LinkedIn. Job opportunities are in not only LinkedIn, also in Connection. There's many places where many platforms where you can have job opportunities. But there's one thing in common across all those platforms is the personal brand. When you go into a platform, you're building your brand. You're letting the world know who you are and what you can offer to their companies. So yeah, of course, it's important to focus on the CV, but also important to focus on the personal brand.
That's perfect. Okay. So, talking about supply chain management, talking about logistics, what would you reckon, given that I work at RSM, I study at RSM, and for us, our slogan is that a positive change. A positive change, what can we make? And sustainability is a big tech revolution right now. It's impacting everything, and it's much required. What would you reckon for a young professional who wants to make an impact on society, wants to make an impact in the world? What would you reckon is an alternative career path they could pursue in the logistics industry?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question, and actually, alternatively to logistics, but very related, it's sustainability. I think currently, not only my company, but all logistics company are trying to do a green transition, trying to cut CO2 emissions. And in that sense, there's many people needed in environmental issues, in sustainability in big companies, also in technology related to that. There's the biofuels currently that are being used more and more because they are a very nice way to not rely on pollutant fuels. So I think there's an infinity of options within logistics, but with a different scope. Yeah.
sustainability, AI, and you talked about logistics and where you work being a very fast-paced environment. You're
Yeah.
constantly talking to people, handling big accounts, things like that.
Yeah.
That's one thing. That's one thing you said that when you were at university, when you studied logistics, you thought it was very theoretical, and when you went in, it was so quick.
Yeah.
What's something else when you went into logistics? You didn't expect it. It was a very surprising thing for you.
Well, I expected it, but it was surprising because I think my expectations were even low in the sense that how fast paced and how the teams are set. So teams are super international. I'm working with people from China, I'm working from people from Turkey, from the Netherlands, of course. Teams are very dynamic and teams are very different, which is great because each member of the team has a unique point of view, a unique way of doing things, and I think you can learn from each other in a very nice way, and that's something that really I didn't really expect and really caught my attention. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something one can really work on while they're in university as well, because at so many universities, especially in this part of the world, in Europe, you'll find such a diverse group of students just working in organizations and things like that. You get to interact with and work with people from everywhere, people from so
Yeah.
many different cultures. That's really cool. So, to wrap this up, I have two questions that I ask everyone who comes to the podcast.
Sure.
What's one golden piece of advice you could offer to young professionals looking for work?
I would say don't settle.
Mm.
Look for something that is meaningful to you. Not take any job. Don't be desperate. The good job is there. You have to look for it. You have to find it. It will eventually come. If you take the risk, if you put your effort on doing it, I think that's my biggest piece of advice. Take the risk. I mean, being in the logistics company, I always like to say, boat is always safer in the port, but that's not why the boat was built to.
Mm.
So yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah.
You have to take the risk. Yeah.
And you worked here for about 5 months now. You
Yeah.
enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it.
You're
a lot,
enjoying
yeah.
it a lot. Yeah.
That's nice.
What's one thing you've learned here that you're like, okay, it was the right decision to come to this company, to come to this city, to work in this industry. What's one thing you've learned?
Okay, so
A
I learned
lesson
like
that's important.
professionally.
A lesson, just a lesson that really helped you professionally or in any way.
I would say a lesson I learned is how important connections are. You need to know your customer, you need to know your team, but at the same time, you also need to have a nice group of friends, have a nice group of people that are supporting you. I think the biggest lesson of being in a foreign country, doing a new job, is that human beings are social. You cannot do something on your own, and people work better in teams that work on their own. So I think, connections. So about the connections, yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good.
It was wonderful. I learned a lot. I love doing these podcasts because I'm a first year and I love learning from people who've been successful in finding jobs that work for them.
Of course.
I learned a lot, and I hope everyone who's watching this learns a lot.
Yeah,
as
I'm
well.
also happy to be here sharing my experience.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure for me to be invited to this podcast.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.